Okay, so today we're lucky enough to have Chris Fawcett back. Thanks very much, Chris. Your interview that we did face to face at Brighton went down really well. So we've got questions from the floor, or notably Twitter. So if you're ready, I'll go down through them and see if you can answer them for these people kind enough to send them in. So the first one is at Matthew Luke. Does Chris think the decreasing liquidity on Betfair has created inefficiencies in the market, which create opportunities for smaller punters, particularly in the place market?
Um, yeah, that's quite an interesting one. I think potentially it has, because I think there's more liquidity more volatility in the market. So if you go into the market thinking this is the price I want, if you think the horse should be 4-1 and it is 4-1 and then it's volatile, so it goes out to 8-1 and back into 5. If you know what sort of price you want, then I think there's definitely potential when there's more liquidity. But having said that, we don't really know, well, I don't know who is actually left on Betfair, so who's playing now, and whether it is just all the sort of sharp punters are there, in which case, then it can be pretty difficult because you don't really know why the price has moved out and moved back. So I think there is possibilities. It does feel very much like the levels of liquidity that were there in 2003, even 2002. So, and at that time, it was a very lucrative time, certainly for me. So, I think there's definitely potential for smaller punters to exploit that, and especially if you don't want a big bet. If you want a big bet now, it's difficult to get on because you try and put, say, £1,000 on, it's just going to move the market because it's so thin. But if you're like a smaller punter, 20, 50 quid, I think, there's a lot of potential there. In terms of the place markets, again, I think the volatility there is big, and it's the same applies. The only thing with the place markets is there are now so many of them. So when it started, they just did the standard place terms. It'd be like three place or 4 place or whatever the standard each way placing was. Now they have like 2, 3, 4, 5 places in the market. So it does mean the liquidity's got very thin. So you can't really get a decent sized bet on.
I'll just say, would it worry you if you wanted £1,000 on and you got it just like that?
Yes, certainly now, it would because um, there's so little money on this. Even in the last 5 minutes, you sort of look at the screen and you can very rarely bet to win £1,000 in one go. So if you were to put a bet, actually a stake of £1,000 and left it up, and that was absorbed, that would be a concern, because what would normally happen is you put the £1,000 bet up, people would jump in front of it, and the market would move. That if someone just took your £1,000, that would always be a concern on Betfair.
Okay, right. The second question at David MU, followed by a load of numbers. If Chris was 18 in 2024, would he still get involved in the gambling world? If not, what would he do now?
Absolutely, I would. And I think the opportunities are there now, just as they always have been. Obviously, like, regulations change all the time, but in terms of what's available now and what potentially is available in the future, I think without a doubt I'd get involved in it. I mean, the lifestyle you can have by getting into gambling and that sort of and living off that means that you have your independence. You're not doing a 9 to 5 job, and for me that's invaluable. I think the one thing I would probably do or advise if I was that age is, rather than going straight into it, I would work for someone else, learn off them. And I did try, to be fair, when I was sort of 21, I did apply to Ladbrokes, Corals, but I was pretty unemployable at that point. So I didn't get any of those jobs, and that's one of the reasons why I did go my own way. But I would I would definitely get into it. I mean, I'm still involved in the industry now, and if I thought there was no future in it, I wouldn't be. So, yeah, I would definitely get involved at 18.
Okay, now the next question, I'm not sure if this guy sort of thinks he knows something or whether it's a genuine question or what, but we ask him anyway. So, Spurs at Spurs races Harry. Is Chris still sticking on in the shops for the permed football bets?
Um, I've not done shops. I think I've been in there once in the last 10 years. And what I did, I was going in to do a football lacquer, and I went, so they got like these machines now that you bet on, and the odds for everything were worse than they were online. So the sort of advantage that I had from a system that worked online was just immediately not there in the shop, because the same product had worse prices for the same bookmakers. So no, I'm not. I don't play the shops.
Okay, now this is a sensible one at SBC underscore Josh. I know you purposely didn't include affordability checks, etc., in the betting people interview, but could you ask Chris how he thinks these policies will play out if they were enacted, please?
Right. So I think this is going to go two ways. It's either the bookmaking industry is going to stand up for itself and actually have a coordinated plan to fight back against all the people that are campaigning for these regulations, or we're just going to slowly drift into a situation where we go from affordability checks to advertising bans to more and more regulation. We just got this single customer view things coming out. They were talking about it yesterday, where any bookmaker who suspects or a customer says they may be addicted or having a gambling problem, they will be banned from that bookmaker, have their account closed, and then every other bookmaker in regulated in the UK. So I think that would just lock punters out that may be having a bad run, maybe saying, "Oh, I feel like I might be addicted." Suddenly they've been taken out of the whole market. So I think it's only going to go, if there's no resistance, it's going to go more and more regulation, and inevitably that leads to the growth of the black market. Because what's happened with GamStop, where people actually voluntarily say, "I don't want to bet, and I want to be banned from all the bookies for a year or 2 years or however long it is," 10% of those have gone to use the black market. That's what the research shows. Because at the end of the day, if you have a problem with gambling, you're going to find a way to bet. And that's the way I see this going. The campaigns for more regulation take no account of the black market and overseas betting. And I really don't understand why the big books have not done something about this. I mean, when in the early 2000s, when Betfair was like an insurgent company, I did some consulting for them then, and they were absolutely fighting for their survival, and with regulation, and they were against the big books again then, and the big bookmakers were just frankly not organised, and the whole business like non-recreational layers and all that sort of thing, the bookmakers weren't organised against it, and Betfair got exactly what they wanted by being organised. And what's happening now is the lobby looking for more regulation is extremely well organised, well funded, and they're only going to get more funding when the new levy comes in, and there'll be about £100 million going into treatment and research and so on. Now that research is going to be used against the gambling industry. It's not just in this country; it's worldwide. This isn't something that's just happening here. In America, there's going to be, the reformers are campaigning. In Australia, they're looking for an advertising ban. So the way I see it is, if the industry does not get organised and hire people and get a decent PR person, which frankly the Betting and Gaming Council is not doing, and actually have something that a goal. What they're doing at the moment is just appeasing, because they behaved badly in the past, they're appeasing every single motion that's coming in, and slowly it's a bit like a sort of boiling frog, and they're going to wake up one day and there's going to be the legal market is going to end up people betting low stakes on slots, low ACCAs, and that's it. Anyone that wants a decent sized bet won't be able to bet in the legal market, because affordability checks will just mean that any variance there with their betting will mean that they'll be limited, or they have to show paperwork that they don't want to show, and yeah, they won't be able to bet. So what alternative does the gambler have? Through the ages, how it's worked is there's been a lot of regulation, then we deregulate, gambling grows, then people come in and say, oh, there's too much gambling, and the regulation comes back. And we're at a phase now where we had the deregulation in 2005 as a response to the technology change of people, bet offshore with Victor and then Betfair coming along. So they changed the regulation then. We had a good period for gamblers. So at that point, I could bet with Australian bookmakers, with bookmakers in the Caribbean, everywhere, all around the world. And it was a highly competitive market. And then 2014, I think the point of consumption tax came in, and that was all cut off. And you could only bet with the UK licensed firms. And since that point, the regulation has just stepped up and up. And I think this is all, the people it really hurts is the small and medium gambler. And the big gamblers, the syndicates, they'll find ways. They'll get in. They're global. They'll get into the international markets. But in terms of small and medium punter, they're going to be reduced to betting on slots and ACCAs, which I don't think is really the goal of anyone that's trying to stop gambling harm. And if they want to have a decent bet, they're going to have to use the black market, which again is going to increase harm. So the whole regulatory framework, I think, is counterproductive, and the bookmakers really need to put their differences aside and get organised and fight against this, I think.